Welcome to Things Go Sideways. This is the space and the place for honest stories about the moment when life does what life does and it doesn't go as planned. It's when certainty breaks down, it's when identities shift, and it's when answers don't show up right away. These are not meant to be stories about fixing things fast or tying everything up neatly. They're the real life stories about being in the middle of change and learning how to stay present when clarity hasn't arrived yet. Today, I'm joined by Danielle Duran Baron. Dani has led the highest levels of association leadership, strategy, and communications. And like many people who look successful from the outside, her story also includes deep personal and professional chapters that didn't unfold the way that she expected. So, Dani, I'm glad you're here with me. This is years in the making. Thank you for being here and for trusting this space and telling your sideways story.
Thank you so much for the invite, Kiki. A pleasure to be here. And I'm excited. I'm excited to talk to you. Like you said, it's been years in the making. We kind of chat here and there. So finally, we're making that happen now.
Oh my gosh. For folks who are listening to this, I am telling you that Dani has been someone who is really well known in the association industry. She's wildly creative. She's super smart, very stylish, and is somebody that I have run in the same circles with for a long time and have been fascinated by, but from afar. Haven't had a lot of personal conversations with you. And so, Dani, I'm super excited to talk about some of your story because you've written a book, you have done some really creative things, and I've heard bits and pieces. I've even listened to other podcasts where you've shared bits and pieces. But I wanted to talk with you today because I know you have some sideways stories. When you think about your life as a whole and you think about your life as like a book, what chapter or stretch of time most feels like a true, things went sideways moment for you?
I have a big one, and then everything else kind of feeds off of that one. Obviously, early on in my late 20s, I was given a very serious diagnosis. I was diagnosed first with a liver tumor. I had no symptoms, and that's the story in the book. I had no symptoms. I was living my best life. I just finished my master's. I was living in the US for a very long time, and I moved back to Brazil, and life was as good as it could be. And then, I got a routine blood work, and things weren't right. And I kept looking for it. And that's the thing. It's not like in movies, like boom. My thing was, it took me a long time to get to diagnosis because they couldn't figure out. And that's the sad part about young people getting very sick. We're too young to get sick. So nobody was expecting that I would have liver cancer at 28.
Yeah, 28. So, my gosh.
So they thought it was, lupus at one point and whatever. And then so I had this diagnosis at first. They didn't know what it was. It was a very large tumor that had to be removed. So back then, and things have changed a lot since, I dealt with it. They were like, we're not going to even do a biopsy because this is huge and your life is in danger because if this thing bursts, you're gone.
Oh my gosh.
So we're going to have the surgery in a few days. As soon as we get the OR ready, you go. And so that's kind of like started, but it was crazy. One day I was telling my boss, I need to take a day off because I have to do this test. Then I come back and I'm like, well, I am not going to be here tomorrow. I don't know about the day after. I don't know when I'm coming back, but here's the stuff that I'm working on. And I guess I'll be in touch.
Can we just pause right there? Because that's incredible. You go from living your best life. You feel like what is going to be coming your way because you're a go-getter. Look, masters, all this kind of stuff. You're making all this stuff happen. You're young. I imagine going through just understanding that there's something not right health-wise. Each time they're trying to diagnose and they're trying to land on what the thing is, this mystery illness, you're going through the emotional, this emotional ringer of what does it mean if this is, because you're a problem solver by nature. You just naturally are figuring out, okay, well, if it ends up being lupus or whatever, here's what I'm going to have to do next. And I imagine that it's very tiring when it's not an overnight diagnosis and when you're going through this back and forth on what could it be. How long did that go? Like, how long did it take?
So it was about 2 years.
Oh my
But
God.
again, I wasn't feeling bad, right? Like to be fully transparent here, as vain as I am, I wanted to do liposuction. So that's why I had the first blood work.
Uh-huh.
And so obviously I'm from Brazil. I was going to have it in Brazil, but I was living in New York at the time. So the surgeon was like, well, get your blood work in New York. As soon as you land, we're going to go to the clinic. We're going to do that. I'm like, great. That's how it started before I moved back. And then I call my primary care physician, he orders, and I'm like, okay, cool. I'm getting the stuff. I'm going back. And he's like, yeah, you're severely anemic. But he was like, well, back then I was like 26 or 27.
Yeah.
He was like, well, that's not that unusual. Women your age, there are a lot of factors that could be, don't worry, but we need to investigate. But there's no liposuction for you. So know that. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But he was like, it's not that uncommon. So you go and you do this and you do that. And they're looking for traces of what it could be. And again, I'm not feeling bad. So it's not like we got to figure this out. So I'm like, okay, I'll do that. It's not that. Let me wait. And then I end up moving back to Brazil. And then, I'm like, oh, back to that thing. And then once I go to this holistic doctor and he orders this very thorough list of tests that I have to do, blood work and all that stuff. And that's when I'm like, I don't know anything about blood work or whatever. I'm not a doctor. But in Brazil, even 20 years ago, even over 20 years ago, first of all, you get your tests yourself. And the stuff that you see in my chart now, like the ranges, we used to get that. So you don't have to be a genius to figure out, oh, let's say the window is supposed to be 1,000 to 3,000.
And
Why am
something's
I
off.
30?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's not right. That's too far. And that's when I was like, we have to figure something out. And then I went back. I mean, I saw anybody. I saw a hematologist. I saw a gastroenterologist. I saw whatever. Then I went back to these people. I'm like, this is really bad now. And that's when they said, and this is kind of like, obviously, I believe in God. And so I think he was right there with me because we went back to the first gastroenterologist that I had gone to. And she was like, okay, I need you to do an ultrasound. And it has to be with this doctor. And it has to be very soon. And so this doctor happened to be close friends with my parents. So I'm like, well, thank God. So we got home and then my parents called her and she's like, yeah, she'd seen me as a girl, grown up and everything. So I'm going there and she's known me. And that's when it gets like movie-like. So, the ultrasound room, it's dark and you're talking to the doctor and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, her facial expression just changes. Like she's seen a ghost. And I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, I found something. It's here. And it's pretty large. And she was like, okay, we're going to wrap this up. You're going to have to do an MRI right now. I'm just going to make sure it happens because I was doing it at a hospital. And then we'll figure things out.
Wow.
And sure enough, that's kind of like how it happened. And then from there, they were like, you need a surgeon and a liver surgeon. And what? I never had surgery before. So it was kind of like, I tell people, that's the part that it's exactly like it is in the movies. People start talking to you and all you hear is, wah, 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 wah.
Yeah.
You're there, but you're not really there.
Wow. Oh my gosh. So I can imagine because you're probably at that moment feeling like, okay, this isn't something that is just like a normal thing I'm going to have to deal with. And also like, what does this mean? What does this mean for my future? What happens next? And how do I feel about it? There's this whole thing with like, we have an idea about our relationship with ourselves and our bodies. And I imagine that that's also very difficult to reckon with, to figure, wow, there's this tumor in my body. There's this thing that I don't want to be there. And you had to have been going through so many different thoughts and feelings and concerns. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it's just a shock to absorb and how you tell that to your parents.
Yeah.
And, how you go about finding doctors. But again, everything worked out. So my parents were given this news. My dad had a friend who was releasing a book, and the friend was a doctor, and he ran into an old friend I hadn't seen in a while and told a friend, I just heard this yesterday or something. And we're going to go see this doctor because I think he's going to operate on her. And this friend of my dad's like, oh, no, he can't. Like, there's only one person in this entire city that can put their hands on her. And that's not this guy. It's this
Yeah.
other guy. And I'll make sure that you get to see him right away. And it's like the amount of people that really mobilized. I had a friend, and it was so funny because like everybody's kind of like calling and you can see this and go see this person's my friend, and everything kind of converged. And I ended up seeing this doctor, and his name is Joaquin, which is the name of my first child.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Does that ever make you think about what went into, like, when you were naming your first child, like, who would have known, or like, oh, wait, is that why?
Yeah, that's why.
That's why. Oh my
That's
God.
why I mean,
Okay.
because
So,
when things go sideways, that's just the first story. There are so many things that had to go absolutely right so that child could be born.
oh my
And that was just,
gosh.
one of the very first ones was this doctor who said, "No, I'm going to take care of you. It's going to be tough, but we'll do it."
So you find this out, things go sideways. You go through a 2-year odyssey of trying to figure out what's going on, figure it out because of the community that you have, because of people who care and pay attention. They are connecting you with the right doctor. You're being put in the right hands. You go and have surgery. Like, how does that go? What happens next?
Surgery was rough. Surgery happened in less than a week because everything had to happen really fast. And so I shocked, flatlined 3 times.
Oh my God.
Because one of the tumors, the major tumor was huge, it was 18 centimeters. So it's the size of a small melon like this. And I had, I think, a little one. So it was really, really difficult. The other thing that is very touching is that, of course, I would need blood.
Mhm.
And so, like you have to mobilize people and all that. And I had so many people. Like when I was getting ready for surgery, the woman from the blood bank came. She was like, "I wanted to know you because people must really like you, or a lot of people, because this is a record donation." Like
Oh
I've
my
never,
gosh.
considering it was such short few days that I had, and people
Yeah.
just came. It was insane. Fast forward a little bit, but I was walking with my sister months later, and she ran into somebody, and if it was with somebody else, anyway, it was this guy that had heard from a friend who was friends with my sister who decided to donate blood, and he was walking by this church that was praying for me. He went in to pray for whatever, and he decided I don't know who this guy is. And he decided he needed to pray that day, and he walked in, and there was a mess for me. So this is kind of like how, like when people say
Oh.
humans are evil, I have a really hard time because,
You've seen the good and you felt it and
yeah,
received it. That actually makes me think of a question that I wasn't planning on asking, but have you always been open to that and felt that openness to the idea of people being good, or was it this experience that really reinforced it? I guess the question I'm asking is, did you start out being the kind of person that is saying, yeah, essentially, I think people are good? Or is that something that has become more reinforced and almost validated through your own experience because of what you saw?
I was a little bit skeptical. Yeah, they're good people, they're bad people. But like the goodness of strangers,
Hmm.
that to me became crystal clear. Like,
Yeah.
like these people don't know me. They don't even know people who know me. And they
Yeah.
decided that they can help. And it's not convenient either because you have to leave whatever you are. You have to go to this place. You have to donate blood. You're taking time off or whatever you're doing, and it's not painless, right? There's some people who are afraid of needles. It's not comfortable. And you do it anyway for somebody you don't know.
Yeah.
And you go to church and you're praying for somebody you don't know. I
Yeah.
mean, I think those experiences are horrible, but they give you a very unique perspective. And unfortunately, I had a few of those. Like years later, spoiler alert, it came back. I had another surgery. I was already married and everything, and I was not expecting to relapse. Of course, it was a late relapse. And my husband was back in Brazil with me. And then we found out that I couldn't go home because I needed another surgery in Brazil. We ended up staying with the team that knew me. And then as he was contemplating, he was like, "I'm not going to go back. I'm going to take a leave of absence." Again, strangers, because he works for a very large federal agency, donated leave so he could
Wow.
stay with me for 6 weeks. I didn't know these people. Some I knew, but the vast majority we didn't. He didn't, or he knew, in passing. But again, like they're taking their leave. That's their time to do whatever they
Interesting.
want.
Yeah. And I think that this is an important note too, because a lot of times people, I think that they feel like Why is this happening to me? I'm a good person. I'm doing the things I should do. And listen, it's like, I think that because of fairy tales and stuff, we believe that, okay, if you get through one challenge and it's like they lived happily ever after, well, 5 years later, there was another issue, because like it's life. And so you're a good person, you're living your life, you've got all of these great things going on, and then a challenge shows up again. And guess what? People show up for you and your husband and your family again. So this is almost reaffirming what you've experienced, what you've learned about people along the way. What does that say to you? Like, what did you learn going through it the second time that you didn't know from the first? Was it different? Were there different
Yes.
lessons?
Well, it was very different because the first time I didn't know it was cancer going in. I knew I had a tumor. And then during the surgery, they didn't think it was cancer. Everybody was shocked when it came back. And it was a very rare cancer that there's still very little research to this day. Imagine 22 years ago, much less. So I needed processing. And I didn't tell people what was happening. I was telling here as I was finding out. So when it happened the second time around, and that's how I raised my children, I think the truth will set you free. And I think you need to tell your story and own your narrative. And you find, again, that people are good. So the second time it happened to me, I knew exactly what it was. I sent an email to all my friends, like Merry Christmas. And this is what's happening. This is what I know. There's a lot to process. This is what I'm dealing with. If you could say a prayer for me, if you could send me good vibes, whatever you can. But I wanted to hear from me because if I'm out of touch for a little bit, this is what's happening. And mind you, this is December. I'm supposed to be the matron of honor at one of my best friend's weddings in New York in February, Valentine's Day. And so I call her and I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen, but if there's any possibility that I'll be there, I will be there. Spoiler, I was there. So it looked very different. And then the second time is worse than the first time. Because the first time you don't know that you're going to go through a lot of pain, a lot of uncertainty. It's very difficult. So the second time, that's what I'm up against. And with cancer, like I had this fear that, okay, so I got lucky. I got 5 years to live my life and to be happy, and I'm going to be gone. I wasn't in that space for a long time.
Yeah.
But I did go there. I did go there to say, it might be a lot of people, when it comes back, that's when it takes you, My husband was there, of course, and we were in my hometown, and I was going places and showing places he hadn't seen before. It wasn't his first time in Rio, but like places that were special to me. And I did tell him, if I'm not here, you got to go on. You got to live your life. You got to be happy. You got to be happy for me. You made me so happy. I hope it doesn't get there, but I need to tell you. He's like, I don't want to hear it. And I'm like, I'm not going to say it again, but I've said it and it's out there.
I think that that's really important to think about, because this belief in the truth and this putting so much value on the truth, I think that in a lot of cases, people can, whether they mean to or not, put a lot of pressure on someone else that they care about who's going through a trying time, especially if it's health related or something like that. No one wants to think the worst, right? It makes them fearful. It makes them feel bad, especially if they care very much. And I think because of that, some people, they want to rush to making things feel better because they want to feel better. They want you to feel better. So it can be really frustrating, I think, to have somebody try to rush you through that. No, you didn't think that you were ever going to, maybe this would be it. You didn't think that it was going to be negative. And you're saying, no, there was a moment, there was a time when I got to that place. And that was also part of my experience. I think that's so important because people who go through this can feel like they blame themselves for ever having any negative emotions. And it's like, it's normal to feel uncertain about what's going on and to have fears and doubts and to think this way. So thank you for sharing that part of it. So as you're sharing these things that are so important with your husband, and you're saying, look, I need you to understand this about me, what are some things that you're going through for yourself? Like, what are some things that you're beginning to understand? Are there things that are new that you're beginning to appreciate or come to understand about yourself that are different from what you knew before that experience?
It's what really matters. And I've talked to other people that had similar experiences, like they had cancer early on and whatever. And in a way, I'm kind of not glad. Nobody can be glad because they got that sick. If I had to choose, would I put myself in that situation? No, I don't think so. But it's kind of like when you asked, did you believe that people were essentially good, that good before? No, I didn't. I thought they were good, whatever. Maybe I didn't think too much about it. But having something like that happen so early on and really being knocked out and being down, and it's kind of like you go all the way and then you fall. That was the recurse. That's how I felt. Like I got to the peak, right? Oh, look at the view. Oh my God, I made it. And then somebody was like, nope, you go right back down. And so I keep thinking to myself, and it's been a long time now, and I get mad at myself when that, and when I forget that, like that shock that really puts everything in perspective, right? This is what matters. This stuff does not. This does not. This, yes. Those people, yes. Your health, yes. Your family, yes. Your contribution, yes. The people you care about, yes. The gossip, the whatever. None of this. None of this.
I mean, and that stays, right? Like the gossip thing is such a great point. I think about when I was younger, getting sucked into stuff like that and worrying more about it. And I think that once you've gone through a few stuff, you just don't even care because you're like, honestly, doesn't ultimately matter at all. And in 5 years, I won't even remember that this was a thing, like,
and even the bigger stuff too, like the job that you really wanted and you went for it and you didn't get.
Yeah.
And then it feels like the end of the world, right? Oh my God, I did my best and I can't believe this didn't work out. And I'm like, well, you're still alive. There is another job clearly out there for you. So this wasn't it. There's something else that's coming your way. And so that's why when you ask about sideways, I'm always like, yes, it makes a much more challenging path for sure. But also, I mean, I've always been a storyteller, and maybe that's my curse because it makes for such better stories.
It does. Yes. It does make for better stories. And I think that it makes for, if we're here on this planet as sort of a school to learn and to experience and to like learn these lessons and things like that, how do you learn if everything's perfect, And it's not that you want challenges, but like, as long as you can like somehow survive them, these are the things that can sometimes give you the best gold and certainly the best stories. I bet when you're sitting around with your family, you're like, oh, remember that time, or, oh, I've got a great story about that.
And even the little things, because when I had it for the first time, I was single. And like I had to go, like, I'm not a big drinker anyway. So it was not well, if you say Coke Zero, that's my poison. But, I'm not much into alcohol anyway. Yeah. But like, and social occasions and people, I have a drink, and you're like, no thanks, no thanks. And most people get the hint, but you have other people like, what's your problem? Are you an alcoholic?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, it's liver cancer. And they're like, what?
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm like, you have to shock people because they're inconvenient. And then you're dating someone and you tell them, and then things get serious and they're like, oh my God, because that's the thing. Like I had no choice. That's my life, right? That's the hand I was given. But, my husband did have a choice. We didn't know back then, if whatever I have is, now we know it is genetic, but not hereditary, but we didn't. And then, of course, when he married me, we thought, yeah, there is a chance this thing might come back, but probably not. And then it did come back and we were married. So like you need to be a certain type of person to say, you know what, all things considered, I still want to be with you. Because a lot of people are like, yeah, you're nice and all, but maybe not worth the headache. And that's okay. That's okay too, because going in exactly that you might be repellent to certain people who don't want that for themselves for whatever reason. And that's okay too.
Yeah. You're figuring out yourself and other people are figuring out their own. And who knows what they're dealing with or what's going around that. But it's incredible that in your story, you do have this love story. You do have this decision that was made. He's consciously deciding to move forward in a relationship where it's like, okay, we're really doing this. We're really in this together, no matter what. And you go into that, that is something else where you're learning things about yourself, you're learning things about each other. Are there additional, because of what you went through and this idea that it could come back or whatever, is there something inside of you that makes decisions differently now? Is there something that when you look at your philosophy about life, do you think it's impacted? It'd have to be, right? It'd have to be impacted by that.
Sure. I think make it matter, right? Because right now I'm fine. I just had my checkup in November and everything's great and whatever. And they say it's been so long. But what I was left with was like, make it matter. The time you're here, make it matter. So, like when I'm gone, people don't need to worry about, oh, she would have, should have, what. No. She's doing it. She's going for it. I really wanted to have a family. And for me, it wasn't like, oh, oops, I'm pregnant. No. It was like, one, can I get pregnant? When can I get pregnant? How can I get pregnant? And the doctors were very clear and very supportive, but they were like, everything comes at a risk, right? So what's your tolerance? There's this and this and that, then there's that. And certainly we don't advise you within the first year, but then the second year we can start looking, the longer you wait, the safer you will be. But again, I was in my early 30s and mid 30s. How long can I wait? Yeah. So all those things. And for him too, right? It was interesting because when I met my husband, obviously he knew what happened. And he was like, I wish I was there to help you. And then it happened again. I'm like, well, guess what? You're here now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
It was fantastic. I can't even imagine again, because this all happened. I was in Brazil. It was his first time spending Christmas with my family after we got married. It's supposed to be a joyous time. And here we are going from doctor to doctor in a language he didn't understand, trying to take notes. And, at first he was like, no, we need to go back to the US. You need to go back to the US. It wasn't until he talked to someone that he trusted, who was a family friend, also a physician here. And he asked him some questions. And once he answered questions, the doctor here said, no, she should stay where she's at. Sounds like she's got a good team. She's got good insurance. She's, they know what they saw and what they left there. So they're the best people to figure this out. And essentially that's what we did. But I just can't imagine like being deep into so much, for like a bit, like drama, real drama, right? Life or death drama, and not understanding a whole lot of what's happening around you because these people are speaking another language. And it's not like, can I go to the bathroom language or
right
off?
Right. Yeah. These are like very serious discussions. I imagine he was trying to interpret every kind of emotion on the face. He's like looking at like all the nonverbals, any hints he can get. And then later going, what'd they say?
Yes. And so he was in the hospital with me the whole time. I mean, luckily I wasn't there for a very long time, but everybody got to know him. It was interesting because most people would take them a long time to get acclimated to like a family or, that person's social circles. And he knew some of my friends, but all of a sudden he knew everybody knew him. And it was it. He was immediately part of that group, part of that community.
Well, so you guys come together, but later, and this is an awkward transition, but I'm thinking about all of the stuff that has happened. At some point, you've made it through, you decide that you're going to write a book. Now, talk to me about the book, when you decided to write it, why you decided to write it, and what went into that, because it's not like a lighthearted sort of, oh, you know what, today I'm going to throw together a book. Like there's a lot that goes into making something like that happen. So why did you feel compelled to do it? And like, how long did it take you to like go through that process?
So the book, a lot of it had already been written because as I was going through the second time. So what happened was when I sent that email to a bunch of my friends, I had secretly, I thought, started this blog. I didn't tell anybody because I write to understand myself, to process my feelings, right? So I'm writing and whatever. And one of the friends that got this email was a travel blogger. And I don't know how she found my blog. I think she was a blogger or whatever. It wasn't my name or anything, but you couldn't see it was me. And then she found it weeks later. I had a few entries that I meant for nobody to see. But again, maybe I did want people to see. That's why I didn't hide it so well. Who knows? So she decides she's going to send to her friends to ask for support, prayers, vibes, and whatever. I know this girl, she's really nice and she could use a prayer, whatever you believe in, send it to her. It's like, the end of the year. And so the blog became something. And so I was writing this blog and, as I was going through it, and then I ended up getting better. And then I come back here and then it's like the follow-ups and getting into Johns Hopkins. It's just like the diary of a patient. And then like you want to get pregnant, but you can't get pregnant. How does it go? So it was all of that. And then I kind of like, at one point I was like, you know what? My life is pretty normal now. It's kind of boring. We need to wrap this up. And, now I have a baby. Everything is good, people. It's been a pleasure. So I left it there and never touched it, but it was always nagging because people still to this day find me on Instagram because the cancer that I had is a very rare type of cancer. It's liver cancer, but it's the histology and all that. It looks more like colon cancer versus in the liver, and it's a adolescent young adult cancer. So it's very rare that somebody over 40 will have that for the first time. So it's very healthy patients. Unlike most liver cancers that you have cirrhosis of the liver or something, these people have perfect health until this thing happens to them. And it's very rare. When I Googled 20-something years, there was nobody ever. And then so now they find me. And it's a very lonely place to be. I mean, when you're sick, no matter what, it's a very lonely place to be. If you're sick with something that's very rare, you feel very isolated. Because I remember when I had this thing, I was like, oh yeah, there's one person that had a liver tumor. Hers was benign. I'm like, well, that's not kind of the same. So I was like, if I can tell these people that there's hope, that I'm still here, that I'm alive, that I'm well, maybe that can give them some strength and some solace as they go through the most challenging part of their lives. And so during the pandemic, everybody was locked up. I was in between jobs. I had left a position that was not a great fit for me because to me, it was like, okay, I will leave this thing and then I will go on holiday. And then after the holidays, I'm going to start job hunting. And then the pandemic happened, right?
Yeah.
So
oh my God.
It was a tough time. And then, part of me was like, if I have to do this, it's now. I'll gather my thoughts and then I will take people to where I am now. Now I have 2 kids and, life is good, but I want them to know that, to your point, right, that it took a long time to get here. And what people don't understand about recovery, I don't want to say everybody, but most people, is we imagine recovery to be like this, upward trajectory. What we don't realize is that it's usually like this. And there are downs, and some downs are pretty deep. And we're not expecting that to happen. So that can be really heartbreaking. And that's why I tell people, because then the other thing that happens is everybody that has cancer calls me. And so I am always dealing with that. And I'm very happy that they do. And I'm very happy that I have something to share. But that's the one thing I tell them. I'm like, recovery starts today, regardless of where you are, right? Your surgery, your treatment, whatever. And even after you complete your treatment, it's not going to be upwards and smooth. It's going to be bumpy. And sometimes it's going to feel like a setback, but it's still recovery, it's still moving forward.
Well, and I think that's so important because you're right. In all the movies and the TV shows, it's like there's a montage for what you're talking about. There's like, oh, she's going for treatment. Oh, she's doing this. Oh, she's meeting with a nutritionist. Oh, da, da, da. And I think that it really shortcuts all of these moments where it's like you wake up one morning, you're tired, and you're like, I'm just tired. I'm tired that life is going like this. I don't know what the future holds. I feel crap, and that's normal. That's totally normal. You're also mentioning that life is still going on. You still got stuff going on with work. You've still got stuff going on probably in your interpersonal relationships because you've got one big thing that's happening in your life. It's not like everything else goes, okay, time out. Danielle's having a hard time, so we're just not going to give her any other problems. It's like life continues to have all this other stuff. And it's not because you're a bad person. It's not because you did anything. It's just because it's life. And somehow you're still having to get up in the morning and live your life. And none of us are perfect, are we? So We can't just like, let's just hope for the best. I'm going to be cheery all the time, you know? And I think that that is what's so critical for people to know is that it's totally normal for us. And it's actually normal and to be expected that you are going to have highs and lows. And things are still going to go wrong, even when if everything were fair in the world, it wouldn't be. You're going to have those times where it's just stuff is sort of loading up and you're like, really? One more thing? I'm going to have to deal with this.
And it's you also feel like you have a clear understanding of like you are a small part of the whole, right? Because I remember when I heard that the disease had returned, that I would have surgery, I had scheduled lunch with my friends and I had to cancel and whatever. But I remember coming back and driving. I wasn't driving, I was sitting, but the car, and it was a beautiful summer day. It was hot and it was not a cloud in the sky. And these people are waiting for the bus and they're crossing the street and they're going to the beach. And I'm like, do you know what's happening to me right now?
Right. Yes.
Why are you smiling? This bus is not important. I just found out that I'm sick again. This is really bad.
You're like, hold up, world. Oh my God.
And you're just like, they don't know. It's none of their business. They're going about their lives. And I've shared that with some people and they were like, exactly that. I felt the same way. How could that be that I was in such despair and everybody else didn't know any better? They were
people are still going getting their groceries. They're like, how dare they? Don't you understand? My life is falling apart right now.
Yeah. And this is it's the wildest feeling because you're just like, this is my life as it was. It's over. And you're waiting for the bus and you go pick up your kids. How dare you? But it is, you know, and then the next day, your life is perfectly normal and they're dealing with something absurd.
Right. I mean, and that's really it. You know, you're going through it. And I think that unfortunately, like if you have to go through something more than once, which most of us do, there's going to be something, whether it's you, your loved one, your job, your whatever that you've got going on, you know, you have these sideways moments where it's like, okay, the rug's been pulled out from under me. And you realize this happens to all of us, right? We all have our own version of something that is not where things go sideways. So you put this book out because you have this immense value where people are reaching out to you because they're finding it. They're continuing to find it online. They're finding this resource. They're reaching out to you and you say, you know what? I should go ahead and compile some of this experience, right? I'm guessing it to like make sure that this goes out there because others may get value from this. And I have proof of that because they continue to find me and they're searching for it. So why don't I help them out?
And it was, to me, it was kind of like, it felt important. And it was even writing the epilogue or whatever, it was very difficult because I had to revisit that. And I'm like, you know what? I've lived that more than once. I lived that when I was living it. I lived that when I wrote it. I lived that when I reviewed it. I've lived it so many times. I need to be done. I need to put it somewhere and let people find it and know that's there, but that's in the past. You know, if I need to be reminded of something, I'll open the book and read a chapter. I was like, whoa, I can't believe that happened. But that's that. I felt that it was important for me to really put a period and write the end of that story. And I'm writing other stories, but I feel that that one, and it's really hard because I still do some volunteer work with cancer patients, especially young cancer patients. And we lose a lot of them, unfortunately. The last part of 2025 was very difficult. We lost a lot of them that had been okay for a while. And we're just like, okay, you know, they're managing. And then they weren't anymore. And sometimes I ask myself, like, do I still have that in me to do that? And then I'm like, you know what? I'm still here. And that's a small price to pay. And if I can, I'm not a doctor, but I know by now I know so many people who are doing great work. So that's my role. I connect because I know how the medical system here works. And in Brazil, I know very well, and I know the language. So that's kind of like my thing. So my contribution is this one. We have patients in Brazil that it's a very complicated diagnosis to have because it's such a rare disease. There is no standard of care.
Yes.
So to have access to treatment, a lot of times you have to fight with insurance companies. And then a lot of times you have to take them to court. And now we have a system, but time is of the essence. And it really is for these people, right? For these kids. And so that's what I do. And I'm like, I should be doing more. But at the same time, it's so painful to relive that. And the book was important. It's there. I can help kids in this situation and the parents. And that I think to me became harder now because I'm
Yeah.
a mom. And the
Yeah.
kids who have this disease are the age of my child, my older child. And
Mm.
so I thought I had it bad as a patient. I think the parents have it way worse.
Yeah. I can imagine that just because I used to love scary movies and watching scary. This is totally different, but like I used to watch scary movies all the time. And when I ended up having my daughter, and this is a long time ago because my daughter is now 17, she's graduating from high school, but that's all I wanted to watch was like horror movies and stuff like that until I had my daughter. And then all of a sudden, anything that had to do with kids, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to even think about it because I just loved and love her so much that it's like you're scared. You're almost fearful to have anything to do with it, which I imagine keeps people, makes them create distance. You talk a lot about like the people who became closer to you, but I also imagine there are those people who respond with distance because they're so fearful of losing someone who's a friend or someone who's a family member. And the way that they react is like, oh my gosh, I am going to just block
It's
this
funny
out.
that you say that. I don't think it's the advantage or whatever, but when it happens to you twice, it gives everybody a second chance.
Oh,
So I
that's,
had
yeah.
people
Yeah.
that after I was sick for the first time came to me and said, I am so sorry I wasn't there for you. I couldn't bear the thought of seeing you in a hospital bed because the first time I was there for almost a month. The seeing you suffer, I just couldn't do it. I am so sorry. I feel so bad. And then, yay, 5 years again, they got a chance and to, set the record straight. And they were there.
Yeah.
It gave them like the opportunity. Again, I would not recommend that to anyone. But as with everything, when things happen again, it gives you a chance based on the experience you had, do things a little bit different, right? Like the way I handled sharing my news, the way that people around me that the first time was so scared were paralyzed that they couldn't act. And then I think they realized how bad they felt. Like, what if something had happened to me and they hadn't gone see me? So they were the first ones there. They're like, no, I'm here. I'm here. I want to make sure I'm holding your hand as you leave and I'll be here when you come back. So it's interesting to see.
I can't believe that our time has gone by so quickly. I feel like I could talk to you all day because I have so many more things that I would love to ask you. So maybe we'll do another conversation in the future if you're up for it. But I did want to ask you one final question before we wrap up today. And that's really when you're thinking about somebody who's out there, maybe it has to do with health or maybe it has to do with job loss or just any sort of sideways moment. They're in something that's unresolved, that is uncomfortable right now. What feels honest to say to someone who may be in that unresolved place that's troubling without trying to make it better? What is something that feels honest to say who's in that difficult part without trying to say, it's all fine,
You be fine. But the one thing, it's funny, like how people say stuff to you and then you go back and you tell them, they're like, did I say that? That sounds really deep. I don't know I was that deep. But not when I was sick, but during the pandemic, when I was kind of like job searching and dealing with this book. And my dad got really sick in Brazil and I couldn't see him. And thank God he recovered. He's fine. But it was a very difficult moment for me. And of course, it was March, April, and it was rainy, it was cold. And I just remember running to my neighbor, and I don't see her all the time. And I kind of gave her like a very short summary of what was going on. And she just said, Dani, it can't rain forever. It feels really rough right now, but at one point, it's got to stop. It can't, it won't rain forever.
Wow.
And that's kind of like when I got sick for the first time. I would always get up in the morning and I would say, I just have one wish. I just wish that today is better than yesterday and tomorrow is better than today. That's my wish. And, like I said, recovery, it's up and down, but that was my thing. And I think it's important to honor what you're feeling. It sucks. It's really bad. And it sucks that you're in that situation. But that's the thing about life, right? When you're on your high, better get ready because you're going to come down at one point. It might be gradual. It might be a fall. We don't know. But things change. And for me, that's what, and I kept telling myself, it can't rain forever. It won't rain forever. And it didn't. And, the sun came out. And it's important to be ready to realize, because sometimes you're so wrapped into your own pain that you don't see when the sun starts to come out. So it's important that you leave yourself that opening. So when things start to change, you notice and you embrace that.
Just gonna let that sit right there. That is perfect. I said that we didn't have to tie things up with a tidy little bow, but I really think that that is the perfect way to sort of bring this all together. Thank you for taking the time to share your stories with me today and for the work that you've done, for the work you continue to do. It's wild because your ability to engage with people and to be the storyteller is such a gift that no matter what you do in your life, whether it's putting books out, a blog out, interacting with people in the association industry, just being a good friend or a good family member, I think that the work that you're doing at Life is really meaningful. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you so much, Kiki. I appreciate that. I appreciate your invitation because I always, like you, I always admire it because you're always up to something, and it's something different. It's something creative. And I love you send your fillers out and see how people, because I think maybe that's what we have in common, right? And people respond to it. And I think that's your sweet spot where you go and you do it. Because a lot of people sit on it and maybe you just go for it.
Yeah.
And that's amazing because how would you know if you didn't do it? So I think people look from the outside and they look and my gosh, she's brave. She's out there. She's doing it again. And, I'm super happy and honored to be here.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. And I am super excited about this project because it is that sort of thing where it feels like the right time and the right thing. And I don't know how it's all going to manifest, but all I know is this right now, it's like having conversations like this feels really, really good. So I'm just going to keep doing that and see what happens with it.
You should do what feels good.
There's a big zing that goes through my body every time I'm working on this and having conversation. I'm like, this is right. This is right. So I just trust it, Well,
thank you so much, Kiki.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.